streaming on WFSB Plus our analysis of the Michelle Troconis trial. There is no court today. I'm Kara Sundlun. We are taking a look back at the case after 20 days of testimony now. Yesterday actually marked the 20th day of this case. And right now we're talking about all the evidence and the witnesses in this case, especially in the past week. You might remember that Troconis is one of two people facing charges in connection with the disappearance of New Canaan mother Jennifer Farber-Dulos. And many of you have certainly been watching the case play out from the courtroom, watching it streaming live on WFSB Plus. So again, I'm Kara Sundlun, and joining me right now is criminal defense attorney Walter Hussey. And he is well known for his work on criminal defense cases like this, but not working at all on the Troconis case, but helping us analyze it. So thank you so much, Walter, for joining me as we break down the important testimony. Just to give you a little bit of, if you're watching this, I'm sure you remember that Jennifer vanished back in May of 2019 in the midst of a divorce and custody battle with her estranged husband, Fotis Dulos. Michelle Troconis was the one dating Jennifer's husband at the time and is now facing charges accused of trying to cover up this murder and her disappearance. We have to remember that this trial really is about Michelle Troconis. Up until this point, you said that the state would really have to prove, even though he's not alive anymore, that Fotis Dulos murdered Jennifer Farber-Dulos in order to get on with the idea of a conspiracy to cover up a murder. Have they done that so far?
Well, I think they proved the murder beyond a reasonable doubt, and that Fotis was responsible for it. But the reason why we're still here and the jury's still waiting to hear how Michelle Troconis is involved in this case, and I've yet to hear it.
Okay, so we're going to take a deeper dive on that, but one of the witnesses that you are most taking notes on and wondering how this is going to affect the case ultimately is the Pavel Gumieni. He was an employee for Fotis Dulos. He's the one who had the other car, the Tacoma, switching of seats, all of this. He has immunity, but you think he is the witness of the week for sure?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He gives us a lot to talk about.
Okay, and in some ways you think he could help Michelle?
I think so.
Okay, we're going to take a dive into that, but I want to go right now outside to Matt McFarland, who has been covering this case from day one. And Matt is joining us. I know it's a break in court today, but you've been in covering this trial up until it took a brief recess. So how has this week been as far as evidence? Can you give us a little wrap up and how important this testimony has been?
Yeah, absolutely, Kara. Busy week down at Stamford Superior Court. Monday, you might remember, started with DNA evidence. So all of those items that state police detectives recovered from those trash cans on Albany Avenue in Hartford's North End. The bloody shirt, the bloody bra, garbage bags, mops, mop handles, sponges, clear plastic ponchos that all had those reddish brown stains. They were tested. Some of them were confirmed to be human blood. The bra, the bloody shirt. DNA testing came in on Monday. We heard from that forensic examiner talk about that they were, in fact, did have Jennifer Farber-Dulos' DNA on them. No surprise there. They did test a number of other items. We talked about some pieces of a black garbage bag that they said likely, high probability, containing DNA profile comparisons to Michelle Troconis and Fotis Dulos on one of those garbage bags. So that was DNA on Monday. As you mentioned, Tuesday, Wednesday was Pavel Gumieni, that one-time employee of Fotis Dulos, the owner of that red Toyota Tacoma pickup truck, came out and said he was driving Fotis Dulos' Ford Raptor that Friday, May 24th, when Jennifer disappeared. He said he was at a job site in New Canaan, ended up going back up to Farmington later that day to pick up his Toyota Tacoma pickup truck. He's questioned on whether he ever suspected Dulos would do something like this. He said originally no. He described him as a good guy. He said could be stubborn and hard-headed, but he's never thought anything would happen. He said originally he thought that maybe she was just missing. That started to turn, he testified, when, he said Fotis Dulos, he discovered Fotis Dulos had his pickup truck cleaned and detailed both inside and out, and then he started pushing him allegedly to swap out the seats of his Toyota Tacoma and also sell it. Under cross-examination, defense attorney John Schoenhorn basically said, how come you didn't come clean to the police right away? How come you didn't turn over the old seats that you had actually saved? How come you didn't stop to talk to the police the first time you saw them as you were driving by Jefferson Crossing in Farmington? So tried poking holes in his testimony. And then yesterday we were talking about cell phone and GPS data from a Fairfield police detective who analyzed Fotis Doulos' 2 cell phones. He testified that the data from the cell phone showed that it never left for Jefferson Crossing, Fotis Doulos' home, that day. There were a number of missed calls, a number of text messages that weren't opened or viewed until later that afternoon, but he testified that one call was answered that morning. That was from one of Fotis Doulos' friends in Greece, who Doulos had texted the night before to call him in the morning. So the question now is, if the police are theorizing that Fotis Doulos was in New Canaan that morning killing Jennifer, who was inside his home allegedly answering that phone call? So that's something that will sort of have to be played out later. He said he also analyzed Fotis Doulos' second cell phone, and he said that some of the call logs could be deleted from May 29th. Call logs from Fotis, between Fotis and Michelle. So that's something that I'm sure that they will pick back up again when court resumes on Tuesday.
And I know you'll be there when court resumes on Tuesday. A lot of the reporters are in this overflow room, but I'm just curious, the first day, Michelle Troconis' family was there. They said they were there to support. Are we still seeing family from both sides show up on a daily basis?
Yeah, family for Michelle Troconis, they've been there every day. Same with the supporters of Jennifer Farber Doulos. So lots of folks in the courtroom, but yes, plenty of folks, and then even just folks sort of interested in this case, watching it play out as well.
Yeah, a lot of people watching it on our live stream too, and of course you can follow Matt McFarland on X, formerly known as Twitter, because I know you're sometimes live tweeting as things are going on. So we will see what happens as we move into this next week and they try to make even more connections. I assume that's what we're going to see with Michelle Troconis. Thank you so much, Matt McFarland, for being with us.
You got it.
So as we break down the details of what you heard, I know you want to talk about Pavel Gumieni. He's certainly the witness of the week in your book. And so let's start with that. As a defense attorney, since that's normally your role, you're seeing, he is the state's witness, but you see some reasons why he's actually could be scoring points for the defense. Talk about that.
Well, I was really thinking about what he had to say, and the reason why he's there to begin with. The first thing we find out is he has an immunity agreement, right? So the state has offered him immunity in exchange for his testimony against Michelle. But why would they have to do that? Every other witness raises their hand, swears to tell the truth, and testifies. So you would expect someone to testify truthfully. Why would he need that inducement? Because he has something to hide, perhaps, or somehow he's involved. But they made an agreement with him to say, listen, we're not going to prosecute you for anything. It looks like a full immunity. Anything to do with this case, he's not going to be prosecuted on. And they expect him to tell the truth. And that's an interesting concept, Kara, because what is the truth? Who determines what the truth really is? I mean, he could tell them anything if it suited their needs and they believed him and they believed that it helped them with their case. They put him on and he testifies. But ultimately, the arbiter of truth in this case is the jury. Does the jury believe him beyond a reasonable doubt or not? And that's really his mission, to try to convince them that she's involved somehow, some way. I didn't see it happen.
Okay. So let's go back with his involvement. We now know that he's driving that Toyota Tacoma, which the state is affirming that that's likely the truck that was used, and
Fotis was.
That Fotis Doulos likely used his truck.
Right.
But to go down there and kill Jennifer Farber Doulos, and that he agreed, or was at least told by his boss, go switch out these seats, go get this clean, go even, I want to buy your Toyota Tacoma, all those things. From the state's perspective, I guess here's an employee who was afraid of him and he just did what his boss was saying, is I guess with their argument.
Well, here's what I say to that. How do you explain the fact that you're in New Canaan at the very time this crime is being committed, more or less? He can't account for his whereabouts. He says he leaves his home in Simsbury in Fotis Doulos' Ford Raptor and drives to New Canaan because they have a property there. Supposedly, Fotis Doulos is driving his Tacoma down to the same property, or not the same property, but somewhere nearby to lie in wait to kill Jennifer, right? So he's there. He's in the same town, the same vicinity. And the first time they picked up, because they did an extraction from the Ford Raptor to see where the car was, he came back at 9:53. He was at the address he claimed to be. and then 12:21 and 12:30. That's the only time that they can actually say that that raptor was physically where he said he was. So that leaves us some time between 9:53 and when he left. And that would have given him an opportunity, at least, to be with Fotostulos if Fotostulos needed some help in what he was doing to Jennifer, which was the murder of Jennifer. If he needed any help at all, potentially he could have been in that very location.
All right, so I'm going to play devil's advocate. If he has immunity, why not just say what really happened and that Fotostulos wanted him to help do something that was sketchy?
Help, or maybe he did help, right? So the issue is he telling the truth? I'm not here to judge his credibility. That's up to the jury.
Yeah.
I'm just doing this as a defense attorney. It always troubles me when the state gives someone immunity. Why would you really have to do that? And I can tell you, I've been in situations where people have gotten immunity from the government in federal cases, from the state and state cases. And the first thing I say to the jury is, how can you trust him? And what's going to happen, too, in both cases, eventually the judge is going to instruct the jury. And one of the things they talk about is credibility. And one of the things the judge can tell this jury is the fact that he did get immunity. You can use that in evaluating whether or not you want to believe this individual. No one else, I can guarantee you, got immunity to testify in this case. And the first question is, why did he get it? Mm-hmm. And I was talking to you earlier. If we drew a board, right? If we were detectives, we can go back in time, and we know that Michelle was with Fotis. Why do we know that? Because we could see her in the Raptor when he was dropping off all the trash bags, right?
Right.
But when we find out, okay, Fotis, he used what? The Tacoma. Who owned it? His employee. Okay, so now we have him for the first time when the police make contact with him. He's in so they say, a full cold sweat. Why would he be like that? Obviously, he's nervous. He's talking to the police. He's in an air-conditioned vehicle. There's no other, I mean, that would be suspicious right off the bat. Then he's going to tell them, well, you know what? He took my truck, and guess what? He detailed it. He washed it. And then he asked me to get new seats for it. And like, he's going to do this, like, willingly just because that's his boss. And then, furthermore, he doesn't buy new seats for it. What does he do? He takes 2 seats from a crashed Porsche that Fotostulos owned, right? Took the seats out, put them in the Tacoma, and we were talking about this earlier. I'm pretty sure those Porsche seats don't fit the Tacomas. He literally just placed the seats in the Tacoma, didn't even bolt them down. Why would you do that? And then he kept the...
Because I guess Fotis asked him to do it, right? Is what he said.
But you know what? Could you make the argument that he's involved? He's trying to cover it up and help Fotis cover up what they did together. And he kept the real seats, but he didn't have time to get rid of them, arguably. And then the state police find the real seats.
Do we think you're going to see that more an explicit argument like you're insinuating right now from the defense?
Sure, that would be in the closing. Oh, you can rest assured that Mr. Schoenhorn is going to make all these points and then some. And furthermore, some of the points that Mr. Schoenhorn did make on cross-examination, I just went through some of the notes I'd made. So obviously it came out that he was, researching like trips to Poland.
Right.
He's from Poland. He didn't have a green card, I don't think, his immigration status, or maybe he did have a green card, but it was up in the air. So he said he was fearful. But yet, it could be he just wanted to flee, right, if he's involved.
And he had deleted that history of looking for Poland and looking for buying
a Tacoma, a new Tacoma, and, okay, he's just saying, well...
And that he deleted his history about looking for the Jennifer Farber disappearance.
Exactly. So, I mean, you got to ask yourself, why would you do that if you weren't involved? Food for thought, right?
Right. I mean, I guess this is, I'm going to play devil's advocate because we asked some of this in our newsroom, and how do you feel about he got an immunity? And like, they just wanted to make sure he got immunity because he has the most useful information. He's being truthful, and the state believes him. So I guess that's where jurors are going to be. Do you believe him, or do you believe the state gave him immunity because they thought he's going to tell the truth?
Yeah, but you don't need it. I mean, think about it. If you're a witness that has no involvement whatsoever in this event, and you say, listen, I'm going to cooperate with you, whoever that may be, and I'm going to testify truthfully, and believe me, the state... I'm in no way suggesting that they put on people that are going to perjure themselves or lie. They believe in this man, right? But why would you make that deal? He needed to know that, guess what? You guys, if you don't prosecute me for anything, I'll help you out. And that's exactly what's going on.
So let's go, because this trial is about Michelle Troconis. You brought up the point that she also was questioned, grilled, many, many hours. And you think it's significant in points for Michelle Troconis that she just kept saying, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's really big. I mean, you saw, well, at least the jury saw last week, 6 hours of her being grilled, right, by prosecutors and by detectives. Basically, at some point, they even lied to her. That came out, which they can do, okay? And I'm not suggesting that's something they can't do. They can do. They suggested to her that they found body parts from Jennifer in those bags that were later found from, when they were dumping them off, well, at least when Fotis was dumping the trash bags on Albany Avenue. So they suggested to her that there were body parts in those bags. Even then, she had nothing to say because I don't know anything. They told her that she was going to lose her kid. They told her she's going to get charged with murder. They told her she's going to jail for the rest of her life. Despite all that, she says, I don't know anything. Meanwhile...
What would she say, though? She doesn't want to go to jail.
Well, I mean, she's not there when the murder happens. We can establish that. We know that for a fact. I mean, so she didn't participate in the murder. They're trying to connect it to the murder in this case. So if she didn't participate in the murder, they wanted her help in trying to make a case against Fotis, right? At that point in time, just like they wanted this employee's help. If she was given the opportunity, she didn't participate in it, and she's sitting in a pickup truck after the fact. I mean, that's really all they have. She's sitting in a truck. Big deal. I
mean, she's sitting in a truck as he's putting away things in garbage cans, which I'm just thinking of all of you when you comment on my Facebook page, and she's got to know more than she's saying, is what some people are saying. Like, I mean, he's sitting there throwing away bloody evidence, and she seems okay with it. And I guess we haven't gotten to the point yet where, and it's not our job to determine her guilt, but like, is Fotis just so comfortable with her that he can throw away the bloody evidence while she's sitting right there, or is that part of how he makes himself look normal?
I don't know, but I do know this. The judge is going to instruct the jury that, I've said this about 4 or 5 times on this, mere acquiescence or presence. In other words, her just being in the Ford Raptor. Conspiracy. No, not at all.
You have to have an agreement in order to get conspiracy to cover this up. So they're accusing her essentially of covering up the murder and the disappearance. She'd have to have some talk with him about it.
Well, see, it's twofold, really. So the conspiracy to commit the murder would have had to happen prior to the murder.
Okay.
And so far, I haven't seen that. And I think we've talked about, I think the way they charge that is to satisfy the fact that, Jennifer was murdered by photostools, right? And they're going to satisfy their need and the family's need for that prosecution. If they could tie her into that, that's gravy. They also have her on the hindering and the tampering with evidence.
And how would that be? Because of the not saying about the bags or not saying what she knew immediately?
Well,
she did come forward and change her story a little.
Yeah, I mean, if you could draw a nexus saying the alibi scripts, remember?
Right.
They were claiming that was part of hindering prosecution.
That would be hindering and tampering.
Okay, but I'm going to make a blackboard for you, and I'm going to put her on one side, I'm going to put the employee on the other side, and he's swapping out seats. He's actually in the town where the murder occurs, and she happens to be in a Raptor after the fact on Albany Avenue, sitting in the car, not participating, and somehow all the weight's falling on her. It doesn't seem right to me.
So obviously we haven't gotten to the part, just so people can understand what we're in for. The state is still producing its case, and then it'll be the defense attorney. Yes, we're seeing some cross-examination, but how is this going to play out? We're talking about a 6-week trial. You're saying at this point it could even go longer? It
seems that way. I know that Attorney Schoenhorn, he was asking the court for an extension of time because his claim is he's flying in people from all around the country to testify. I haven't seen his witness list, but I'm sure he's calling witnesses. And he also said that the state can't give him a definitive date in terms of when they're going to arrest, or at least a ballpark. So that's a problem for him because he's got to schedule his witnesses. If they could say, hey, we're going to wrap this up on the 29th, then he could have his witnesses the next week. But right now, he doesn't know, they're not saying, and he's asking for a delay, and that's not good.
Really? So, but the state will continue to put on its case, and then just procedure-wise, so we can know what to expect, what's going to happen then? There'll be a second half of the trial where the defense sort of takes over? Yeah,
so the state at some point is going to wrap up. And typically, and I don't know what's going on in this case, but typically when you talk to a state's attorney, you'd be like, okay, what do you guys have for this week? What do you have for next week? So you can plan ahead, you prepare, and usually the relationship's good between the defense and the prosecution. You can kind of work things out. It doesn't seem like Attorney Schoenhorn knows what the state is planning in terms of when and how and who's coming, right?
Does that mean a surprise witness?
No, and every witness has to be revealed. So he's aware of the fact that who's going to come. The question is the timing of it. But if you look at sequentially, they followed a sequence from start to finish. So it's really not hard to figure out how they're piecing this case together. And I think, the big wild card that we talked about earlier would be Mr. Mawhinney.
Kent Mawhinney has not taken the stand yet, and he's the one that perhaps, at least to some allegations, may have helped dig a shallow grave.
Yeah, that's correct. That's a claim. And yet they're using him as a witness against Michelle. Makes you wonder.
Of what he might say. So that's...
Well, it makes you wonder why they would even use him against Michelle. I mean, being fair right now, evaluating the case, the testimony of of the employee, I don't know what he's established to help the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Michelle was involved in the murder. I don't think he's established anything in regard to that count.
So let's talk about, there was also maybe, if you're talking about some difficult testimony, that Pavel Gumieni said that Jennifer Farber-Dulos, that Michelle Troconis was all upset during the disappearance because her pictures were on TV, as was her daughter's, and that, you know, when that BITCH shows up, I'm gonna kill her. That was what he said to the jury. How do you think that plays?
To me, that's kind of dirty pull, because he had 4.5 years to say that, yet he never told anyone. Under cross-examination, he said, oh, it came to him around Christmas of 2023. It's like, okay, if that was really said, and you think that it's important, wouldn't you have told the investigators in your original statement? Instead, he sprung that at the time of trial. And why I call that dirty pool, because sometimes people just sit back. He could say anything, right? It's subject to cross-examination, but if he could say, she said X, Y, and Z. But even with that, I think it's intended for the jury not to like Michelle, right, by making these statements. But it still doesn't say she participated. It still doesn't say that she killed her. Matter of fact, it says, you know, when she does come back, as if she was never killed or she wasn't, just didn't know where she was. It doesn't suggest that she participated in a murder.
Let's talk about that phone call from Greece. We basically, the evidence shows that Fotis Doulos' cell phone was in the Farmington home, never left, and that I guess we could surmise that perhaps if he murdered her, he was trying to show, oh, I'm in my house the whole time. Look, my phone never left. There's one phone call, a man from Greece, that we now learn that he told him, Fotis Doulos told his friend to call at a certain time. And it's my understanding Michelle Troconis picked up, right? So,
that's correct.
So is that how they link her? To say, hey, look, she's in on it. She knows to pick up the phone.
Could be. But I think what she said to that matter is that Kent Mawhinney directed her to answer the phone. So the phone was left behind by Fotis, obviously, to suggest he was at the place the whole time. He never left his home. And according to what I understand is Mawhinney told her, answer the phone. And it was a 17-second conversation, and that was it. But apparently to establish that Fotis was going to say his friend from Greece called and he had a conversation with him, and it would have been roughly around 8:30 in the morning, so there's no way he could have been in New Canaan.
You know, there's all kinds of, I guess, I'm wondering, as you talk about, hey, look, here's someone who could pose reasonable doubt. Like, what if this employee was the one who really helped Fotis Doulos move the body, or he's been given immunity, all that. Are we going to get to a point, because given that Michelle Troconis is on trial, where it's going to get a little more ABC from the state? This is why we think she did this.
I don't think so.
Really?
How are they going to do it? I mean, you have to get inside her mind and prove that there was some sort of agreement, right? How are they going to do it? They can't do it, okay? So they're going to rely upon, obviously, Mr. Mawhinney is going to try to fill in the blanks, but he's got problems. So if you think about it, and we're rushing it here, but he hasn't testified, so we got to give him his day in court and see what he has to say and see if it makes sense and see if it could be very good testimony for the state. We don't know yet. But in the end, we can analyze it. We're not quite there, but the two people that they do use are these two gentlemen that possibly are somehow intertwined to go after her. That's not a good look for the state unless he has something really powerful.
Well, that's the thing. We just don't know, right? We don't know exactly what's going to be said, because this is a safe assumption, right? That the state knows more than us. They've got this whole thing laid out, and they chose her as the one to charge.
Well, that's true. That's true. They do know more than us, okay? And ultimately, the jury's going to find out what they know. And ultimately, the jury's going to decide, not you, not me, not your audience. And that's the beauty of it, is hopefully the jury's keeping an open mind and they're not jumping to conclusions like I just did today. But yeah, let's see how things play out. Let's see what Mr. Mawhinney has to say. You know, he could make or break the case.
So Kent Mawhinney could make or break the case. The witness of the week is Pavel Gumieni right now.
I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, we got him. Pavel Gumieni. So that's who we're paying. We don't know yet when we're going to see Kent Mawhinney. Obviously, that's going to be the testimony that is going to be really important to watch as far as perhaps a turning point in the case.
Well, the way I see it, sure. I mean, there's really no one else that was in the inner circle, so to speak, that can testify as to what Michelle should have known or did know, or what she did or didn't do. I mean, the only person left is him, is Mawhinney.
And you know that he has agreed to cooperate in some sense, just for those who haven't caught up or maybe didn't remember that you said this, that he was having some issues with his GPS monitoring, and then he was allowed to have all those issues kind of forgotten because of something that he said to authorities.
Well, it's even bigger than that. So he originally made bond, right? So he had conditions of release that he violated. And then they were looking for him. Apparently they had a high-speed chase to apprehend him. Once he's apprehended, he's remanded to jail. He was there for about 6 or 7 months. Either he or his attorney reached out to the state's attorney and said, listen, I'd like to cooperate. They came out, they met him. I don't know what he said, but suffice to say he was free by the next day. So whatever he said was good enough to get him out of jail.
And that's what we're going to have to wait and hear on the stand.
And exactly. So no matter what he says, he still has that problem that whatever you did say, it got you out of jail.
Now, I'm just curious, and behind the minds, is it like TV where we're watching the lawyers? Like if you're in that courtroom, you're the defense attorney and you're the prosecutor, are they getting a good sense at all about how the jury is going, or a feeling by just watching them, like we see on TV, wondering if the jury is going with them or not?
Sometimes you can get a flavor for it, but a lot of times they have poker faces. Sometimes people are sympathetic to certain things, emotions. If you show someone, for instance, if it's a murder like this case, if there was any gruesome photographs or anything about the victim, usually people can get a little bit emotional. But in terms of testimony, unless somebody is really off base, so to speak, I mean, you can see faces where clearly that the jury or jurors don't believe people. You can tell you can read their face, you know, like this person is incredible. And that's a good thing to pay attention, and it's a bad thing if it's your witness.
So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But unlike TV, there aren't going to be surprise witnesses. The defense is going to know exactly who's coming. The defense knows what Kent Mawhinney is going to say. We just don't know.
Right. It's not like Perry Mason where someone comes out of the crowd. So the witnesses, like you said, I think there's several hundred that were listed by the state. So Attorney Schoenhorn knows what's coming. He also knows what Attorney Mawhinney said. Whatever he said is reduced to a statement, and he has privy to reading that, and I'm sure he's going to be more than prepared when the day comes.
In your estimation or experience, when will Schoenhorn decide if Michelle Troconis will take the stand, or will he have already made that decision?
Well, it's not his decision, it's hers. So ultimately what's going to happen is the state's going to rest, and then he can call the witnesses that he wants, or he could call none, but my guess is he's going to call witnesses. And then finally, the judge will say to, not with the jury being present, but they talked to Michelle, you know, the judge will say, Ms. Troconis, do you want to testify or not? Have you explored the possibilities of testifying, what the pluses and minuses are? Have you discussed it fully with your attorney? And what is your decision? So it's really up to her completely.
Right. Up to her, but she will, of course, be advised whether or not he thinks it's a good idea.
Yes, but it's not Attorney Schoenhorn's, it's no defense attorney's decision whether or not their client testifies. It's always the client's decision.
Have you had clients go against your advice?
I have.
Okay.
But it's their trial.
It's their trial. We will have to wait and see. I know many of you are interested in it. Just a reminder, you can always stream the Michelle Troconis trial live for free right on WFSB+. You can find it on Roku, Apple TV, Fire TV. You can watch it streaming on our app. Walter Hussey, thank you always for your bird's eye view as we break down what's happening in the trial. And we will see you, of course, every Friday here with a weekly wrap-up.
God willing.
Thank you, Walter.
Thank you.
And you can join us for Eyewitness News starting at 4 o'clock tonight, and we'll continue to cover the Michelle Troconis trial. It'll be back in court, of course, on Tuesday.